Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles was co-developed by Capcom and Cavia, releasing across the world in November 2007 for the Nintendo Wii. And, in a first for the series, it takes the action on rails for an arcade light gun experience. The Wii was the perfect console to realise this vision. The world at this point had Wii fever. They were near impossible to find for months following its launch the year earlier, and so, Capcom capitalised on this by putting their premier franchise in the spotlight, going on stage to show it would support the new Wii Zapper peripheral. This is how I originally played the game. Me and a few mates got together, put Wii Bowling and WarioWare smooth moves to the side, cracked a case of lager, and started blasting some zombies. And I loved it. And my experience seems to be in line with both the critics and the public. Umbrella Chronicles sold 1.3 million units and earned a Metacritic of 75%. The game performed admirably for what is an arcade-style experience. 15 years later, I'm playing the game as part of the Umbrella Chronicles HD, which collects both Umbrella Chronicles and its sequel, the Darkside Chronicles, together into a HD port for the PS3. This was originally released 5 years on from the Wii version in 2012. To try and recapture my previous experience, I dusted off my PlayStation Move, picked up the navigation controller, took aim, and readied myself for some skull busting. Now this review, as with all my others, will be split into plot, gameplay and presentation, so let's dive in. Umbrella Chronicles condenses the stories of Resident Evil 0, Remake and Resident Evil 3 before exploring new territory to show the true ending of Umbrella at the hands of Albert Wesker. To bind the games together, Umbrella Chronicles is narrated and presented to us by Wesker himself. He adds the context for each game, and by the end of the 9-hour runtime, he makes the entries feel cohesive, which is big praise, and a long shot from Survivor 2, which can't even condense Code Veronica and make it flow properly. Now as you boot the game, you progress through the series in chronological order. Each game, you get 3 chapters which give the keystrokes of the plot. The events in each game aren't exactly one-to-one, but it does the job to give you enough to know what happens, and to be honest, you can't expect much more from what is essentially 30 minutes with each game. To add to this, if you perform well in these chapters, you'll unlock additional stories which seek to answer what Wesker or other cast members were up to during the events of the games. It's here that the Umbrella Chronicles gives something back to long-standing fans. Have you ever wondered how Wesker escaped the mansion after his fatal encounter with Tyrant? Or how about how Ada got out of Raccoon City following RE2? Well, it's all here for you. On top of this, the game has an abundance of file pickups you can collect across the environment. These further fill in a number of gaps we've had for the series, and for newbies, it gives overviews of the plot for the mainline series. Umbrella Chronicles surprisingly is classed as canon, so for people that love the over-the-top lore of Resident Evil, there's a lot here to sink your teeth into. For new players, it shows enough to get you familiar with the various viruses and BOWs that make Resident Evil what it is, giving you the information to have a base understanding of the world and the characters on the run-up to Resident Evil 5. I don't think new players will get as much from the game as long-term fans, but it might encourage them to go and check out some of the other entries in the series, and that's never a bad thing. There's actually quite a bit to talk about here. Umbrella Chronicles smartly uses its systems to encourage replayability. Upon finishing a mission, you'll get a ranking from S to C, which is dependent on a few factors: time completion, number of enemies killed, critical hits, objects destroyed, and files obtained. To explain this, I'll break it down piece by piece and how they all tie together to influence how you play the game. Critical hits and time completion go hand in hand. To get a critical hit, you need to hit an enemy in their vulnerable zone. Now with the zombie, this is a headshot directly between the eyes. It'll down them in one hit, compared to an entire clip if you miss this zone. It stops you spraying, and instead forces you to go for accuracy. The pistol is by far the best weapon for this approach. However, you'll often find yourself in situations with multiple targets closing space, and then you need to choose which ones you can go for the criticals, and which you need to change to a heavier hitting weapon to avoid taking unnecessary damage. It's here the weapon choice comes into play, and I'm happy to report Umbrella Chronicles has fantastic weapon variety. Upon starting a level, you'll pick your character and then pick a weapon to take in with you. No matter what you choose, you'll have a pistol as default. It's unlimited ammo and does the job at clearing out the zombie scum that appear all over the game. But for beefier targets, you'll need something bigger. You can choose between 5 different weapon categories: shotguns, submachine guns, magnums, grenade launchers, and heavy weaponry. These are then split into 3 different variations, each having their strengths and weaknesses. You find the weapons across the game, and after they've been discovered, you can take them into any level. These powerful weapons have limited ammunition, and importantly, the ammo count carries forwards between levels. Meaning, if you conserve your ammunition, you can rack it up and take it into a harder level to give you a huge advantage. It's awesome. It encourages you to really consider when you'll need to use them. I found myself switching weapons all the time depending on which enemies I was facing, how many of them there were, and my current health level. There's nothing I can point to and say, it's busted. There are pros and cons to using each of the weapons depending on the situation you find yourself in, and they all work in conjunction with each other to make the experience feel constantly engaging. The final 2 parts of the scoring system, objects destroyed and files obtained, go hand in hand. To find the files, you'll need to destroy objects in the environment. They can be hidden in light fittings, computers, crates, desks. Hell, anything that can be shot potentially could be hiding a file. This means from the moment a level begins till it ends, you should be blasting everything on screen, even when there isn't an enemy present. This keeps you engaged even in the sections of downtime between enemy encounters. All of this comes together to influence your ranking, but ultimately, this wouldn't matter if the reward wasn't substantial. In Umbrella Chronicles, they not only provide a leaderboard so you can chase the top spot on the world rankings, they go one better than that. The score you get gives you stars, which you can use to upgrade your weapons. Each gun has 4 levels of upgrades, increasing their max ammo, clip size, power, and finally, giving unlimited ammo. Personally, I'm never motivated by leaderboards, but upgrades? Woo! Yeah, baby! It really pushed me to improve my critical hit numbers and use my newly beefed up weapons to fly through levels quicker than I did previously to get those higher scores. It's an effective gameplay cycle and adds a meaningful reason to replay completed levels. Now, in terms of the levels themselves, for the most part they're all similar. You start, shoot everything in sight, pass a couple of quick time events, and then engage with a boss fight. And these bosses are done really well. They typically have 3 or 4 attacks in a sequence, which then repeats until you whittle down their health. It'll usually be attacking a specific weak point. The boss will then chuck some projectiles your way while you blast them out of the sky, do a quick time event, and then shoot some more weak points. Sure, it's basic, but really fun. With 18 bosses across the game, they could have easily fallen into reskin territory, but they don't. And that's really surprising, seeing as how many tyrant variants there are in the original trilogy. Even though most of the levels follow the same path, there's one in particular that introduces something I wish the team had incorporated more into the game. You enter the subway from Outbreak File 2. It's pitch black, and you need to use your aiming reticle as a torch to find the enemies who are shuffling towards you in the darkness. It's nerve-wracking. The light only illuminates the tiny section of your aim. Not knowing what you're up against and where they are adds a level of terror into the mix I definitely didn't expect when going into this. I just wish the team had incorporated more unique moments like this into the campaign, rather than it be the same thing over and over again, just in different locations. This review so far has been overwhelmingly positive. I think it's time to change that. If you've seen my previous tier list, you'll know how highly I rank Resident Evil 3, so it's fair to say I loved revisiting all the locations and plot points again.
Are you mental?
The game isn't here. We get the locations of Outbreak 1 and 2, with Jill and Carlos running about. Fucking Gravedigger appears in the streets for God's sake. We don't even get to visit the clock tower or the disposal facility. Hell, we only see Nemesis in the final section of Jill's story, and even then he's just mucking about in the RPD. It's lazy as shit. Oh, and Resident Evil 2? It just isn't here at all. Capcom must have given the team a shoestring budget to work off, so instead of taking the time to remake these environments for the Wii, they decided to rip assets from Zero, Remake, and Outbreak, and try to stitch RE3 together from it. This is how my experience went upon starting RE3's missions. I saw the gas truck from Outbreak, and immediately thought, wow, this is an awesome Easter egg. My initial elation turned to horror as I realised what the team had done here. The question I asked myself, why not just bin off RE3 entirely like they did with 2, and just set it as an Outbreak scenario? It's the only time in the entire game I felt like I'd been cheated. I thought for sure the collection of levels entitled Racoon City's Destruction would be Resident Evil 2 and 3 condensed across 3 levels. But no, we get some shitty failed fusion of Outbreak and Resident Evil 3, which serves none of them to the level that they should have been. Oh, and Nemesis voice acting? Just listen to this. Stars. Why not rip the original voice file from Resident Evil 3? This version of Nemesis sounds like he's got his balls taped to a car battery. Jesus Christ. I'm on a roll with this now, so let's just bring it on home. Here's my final complaints, and I'll do this quick time. The design on the new Tyrant Ivan. My guy's got fucking pants on his eyes. Billy's voice actor. He suddenly becomes Chris Redfield for one scene.
Can we put a hold on the whole arresting me thing? We have bigger things to worry about right now.
The team really went all out to make sure we knew this guy was evil. Not only is he Russian, but he constantly licks a knife for no reason whatsoever. Let's move on. For the most part, the cutscenes which bookend the first and last chapter of each story are decent, and the voice acting which accompanies them are all delivered to a good standard. DC Douglas, of course, steals the show. His Wesker is as smarmy as ever, and I'll never get sick of his line delivery, so it's to the game's strength that he delivers most of the lines across the entire game. Musically, this game has some real highlights. The title menu and stage selection are great, as is the final fight with Nemesis. It's just a shame they didn't choose to incorporate more of the themes from the main series, which could have been put to good use here, especially for areas like the Aqua Ring or the RPD, which would have been easy wins. But generally, it serves its purpose, if a bit generic at times. Enemy-wise, you got all the same ones that appear in RE0, Remake and Outbreak. They put to good use, and offer some real challenge in different numbers and variations, which help to keep the combat feeling enjoyable from the start right through to the end credits. Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles takes the Resident Evil story we all love from Resident Evil 0 and Remake, sprinkles in a bit of RE3, and adds additional content to flesh out what happened to cause Umbrella's collapse. And it puts this onto an arcade-style light gun game with engaging combat and systems which encourage replayability. It succeeds in what it sets out to do, realising a form of gameplay which, surprisingly, hadn't been done with the Resident Evil franchise up until now. And it does this without feeling like a quick cash grab, and it does stand on its own as a competent entry to the wider series. It's just a shame Capcom didn't give the team the budget they needed to really make this the love letter it should have been. Omitting RE2 and splicing Outbreak with RE3 was a mistake that shows how limited the team were to using existing assets with very little scope for anything grander. Now, in saying all this, Umbrella Chronicles has been a real joy to play. If you have a Wii or a PS3 knocking about, dust it off and give the game a go. It's great fun solo and even better in co-op, and I'm glad to say it holds up 15 years later. And that's it for this review. If you enjoyed the video, put a like on it, and consider subscribing to the channel for more Resident Evil content. I try to respond to everyone, so put your thoughts on the game in the comments below, and we can discuss it. Up next on the channel is the Darkside Chronicles, before I endure Operation Racoon City. Now, if you're still craving a little bit more from me, you can check out my podcast, In PS We Trust. It's a PlayStation podcast where me and my co-host crack a few beers and discuss the latest news, rumours and hype for all things PlayStation. I'll have links in the description. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.